prisoner of war. Barbara Starr, CNN, The Pentagon.
And our Christiana Amanpour says the ousting of Saddam Hussein had a steep price. We want to warn you, this report contains some graphic images and graphic language.
Baghdad wallows in the wreckage of war. Iraqi tanks and armored vehicles blown up on the city streets, cars and trucks still waving the white flag lest they be mistaken for the enemy. And here, right in the middle of a residential neighborhood, a missile. We're told a SAM-2. Marines are here to make sure it's safely towed away, and the people complain loudly about the fallen regime placing such targets in their midst. They said they were afraid of U.S. bombs dropped in this neighborhood, perhaps aiming for the missile. This is a deep crater caused by a bomb, and around what seems to be the remnants of some kind of vehicle. But just 20 yards away, there are private homes. And the doctors here tell us that they've received many more civilian casualties during this war than they did during the first Gulf War of 1991.
This is a shell to the abdomen. We open the abdomen and have injury to the bowel.
At this one hospital alone, doctors tell us they have received 500 civilians with everything from slight to critical injuries, and they conducted 170 major operations in just 21 days of war.
In the first war, we didn't see such a huge number. This is number one. And secondly, the type of injuries here is more serious, as I noticed, than before.
And now, with the looting, Dr. Hakim says he simply can't get the staff to come to work. Today, no anesthetist, no radiologist.
But thanks God, we cope.
Yeah.
What to do?
That's because they brought their own guns to keep the bandits at bay. U.S. Marines have set up a position near another hospital. Children bring them flowers, and the Marines say they're trying to calm the fears of the past few chaotic days.
Let them know we're not here to harm them. We're here for peace now. That's our mission. It's to give them security.
Inside the hospital, filled with more war wounded, including this 5-year-old boy with a shrapnel wound to the head, the doctor says he's got mixed feelings, relief that Saddam Hussein is gone, but a deep desire for more security.
When Mr. Bush and Blair and others decide to bomb and to change the regime, should be planned immediately.
Down by the main Marine base, a group of Iraqis decided to make that demand more clear, waving a banner calling for a new order and yelling for peace. At one point, it got ugly.
We're here for your fucking freedom, so back up right now!
In the end, though, calm prevailed, with both the Iraqis and the Marines deciding that discretion is the better part of valor. Christiana Amanpour, CNN, Baghdad.
And still to come, from winning the war to keeping the peace, U.S. Marines now have a different mission in Baghdad. We'll take you along.
Whether you're on a straightaway or a twisted road, Kumho's always ready for the unexpected. Design technology, Kumho.
Looks like you're going out of town for a while.
Yeah, 2-week training seminar in Arizona.
Training camp. A chance to bond with your teammates. To learn the newest tricks of the trade. Get ready for another winning year. Geez, I really miss it.
Going away for a while, Residence Inn has everything you need to make life on the road feel more like home.
Here, this always works for me.
Now make 5 stays and earn a free weekend. Call 1-888-MARRIOTT today. Residence Inn. Your Marriott awaits.
Because things are changing so fast, trust CNN. With more frontline reporters, experts who have been there, and the most experienced journalists. Because you need all the facts. Stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Miles O'Brien takes you inside the war in Iraq.
A zone of control around Baghdad.
Experience you can trust only on CNN.
Hi, I'm William Walker, and I used to sell satellite dishes. A word of advice if you're thinking about getting one, don't. They were going to charge me $250 for the install, so I figured I'd do it myself. How hard could it be? I used to sell them. To get a signal, I had to put the dish on a pole. Then the wind knocked out the picture. The dish company told me, wait, they'll come back. I got rid of the dish and got Comcast digital cable. I don't sell the dish anymore.
Expect more flavor. Expect more ideas. Weekdays 5 Eastern on CN8. The nation's top chefs
They're sweet, they have really good flavor. You just don't want to overcook them.
are cooking up more ways to make zesty foods and healthy meals.
That's why your food is so fabulous.
Yeah,
it's always twisted.
More scrumptious dinners and tempting desserts.
The combination of flavors is really, really incredible.
Whatever you can imagine, expect the Fred's Kitchen to take you there. Weekdays 5 Eastern. The Fred's Kitchen is brought to you by 2 Days Bath.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
5:44 Eastern Time. Welcome back. We want to take a moment now for a check at some of the latest developments on the war. CNN's Miles O'Brien has the highlights for you.
1:30 p.m. in Damascus, Syria, CNN's Sheila McVicker reports Syrian Foreign Minister Farouk al-Shara denied U.S. allegations that Syria is helping Saddam's fallen regime. The Bush administration has alleged Syria is allowing Iraqi military goods to cross the border and is providing shelter to leaders from Saddam's regime. 2 p.m. U.S. Treasury Secretary John Snow says international purse strings will open to help Iraq cover from both the 25 days of war and the 25 years of misrule and economic mismanagement of the Saddam Hussein regime. 3:17 p.m. CNN's Ben Wiedemann reports the situation in Erbil is still very unstable. Today, the looting has slowed a bit as locals have begun taking security matters into their own hands. Many people have set up checkpoints and are policing their own homes. 5:11 p.m. CNN's Ryan Chilcote reports members of the 101st Airborne 1st Brigade find and identify remains of a U.S. soldier in an empty lot in Baghdad. The soldiers held a small ceremony before evacuating the body. 5:15 p.m. Rescued Army Private Jessica Lynch returns to the U.S. nearly 3 weeks after her unit was ambushed in Nasiriyah and she was taken prisoner. A C-17 transport plane carried Lynch and 49 other wounded troops from Ramstein Air Base in Germany to Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland.
Miles O'Brien with an update. 2 U.S. aircraft carriers may be heading home soon. Navy officials say the USS Kitty Hawk could leave in a matter of a few days, and the USS Constellation would follow shortly. The decision comes as the need for air sorties into Iraq has diminished. CENTCOM General Tommy Franks will make the final decision when the ships will depart for the United States. The job for some coalition troops is changing from fighting a war to keeping the peace. CNN's Ryan Chilcote is embedded with the 101st Airborne Division, now in Baghdad.
At an abandoned Ba'ath Party residence, the airborne find a working telephone. In the backyard, a swimming pool. In the driveway, a Rolls-Royce. And under camouflage netting, an American-made Huey helicopter. Across town, in an abandoned building, 13 surface-to-air missiles. And inside a compound housing a mosque, an AK-47 machine gun, Syrian passports, military garb, and an elaborate first aid station. An informant telling the soldiers that they would find Fedayeen fighters in the mosque. The men with their faces to the ground telling the soldiers they were simply there to pray.
The 101st Airborne Division is rapidly transitioning from its normal combat operations into a police force here in Baghdad. Their primary job now will be to keep order.
I am Kamal. The troops spend much of their day following leads from tipsters. One lead brings them to this otherwise empty lot, where they find, identify, and pray over the remains of a U.S. soldier who until today had been missing in action.
Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures.
These soldiers will be looking for more cooperation in the days ahead. The 101st is responsible for most of southern Baghdad, and they understand now that their work is just getting started. Ryan Chilcote, CNN with 101st Airborne, Baghdad.
Just ahead, dressed to kill, U.S. forces find dozens of suicide vests. More on this alarming find when we return.
Exclusively from the Sharper Image, the patented Ionic Breeze Quadra cleans and circulates air without a fan or filters and is totally silent. Studies have proven the Ionic Breeze removes allergens such as pollen and animal dander. And amazingly, it even removes harmful airborne chemicals from carpeting, flooring, paint, and household cleaners. It powers through smoke and offensive odors and can leave your house smelling fresh and clean. Cleaning takes only minutes. Just pull out the collection grid, wipe it with a damp cloth or sponge, and slip it back in. It's that simple. Through this exclusive offer, Sharper Image will send you a free bathroom Ionic Breeze. This compact plug-in helps even dirty bathrooms smell fresh and clean 24 hours a day. The $69 Bathroom Ionic Breeze is yours free when you order today. Call now and be sure to ask about free shipping.
Call 1-800-477-1795. Call now.
What about Paris?
Why not the Caribbean? How can planning your next trip be even better?
Mexico?
Knowing your trip could be free.
Hawaii! Yes!
Call now to request the City Advantage World MasterCard, and you can earn free award travel plus get 8,000 bonus miles. And you can use your miles to fly on over 25 top airlines. You'll earn 1 mile for every dollar you spend on everyday purchases and on special purchases too. Call to request your card and 8,000 bonus miles. Plus, now your miles never expire as long as you make a purchase with your card at least once every 3 years. Soon, you'll be on the trip you plan. Use your miles to fly on over 25 top airlines, stay at the finest hotels worldwide, and drive with any major car rental company free. Call now to request your City Advantage World MasterCard and 8,000 bonus miles, and your next trip to almost anywhere could be free.
If you were born between 1918 and 1963, call the number on your screen now to find out more about the Silver Care Plan. The average funeral now costs over $6,000. But did you know your survivors may only be able to receive government death benefits up to $300 if they qualify? The Silver Care Plan is a way to help protect your loved ones. To get free information about the plan, just call the number on your screen.
An ominous discovery at a Baghdad school raises concern that suicide bombers are still very much a threat to U.S. troops in Iraq. Our Jason Bellini with more on these deadly designs.
It's unisex, one size fits all. A non-returnable garment worn by those dressed to kill. Suicide vests. 50 were found, stored at an elementary school.
Coat pump of suicide. You understand me? Of suicide. The volunteers use it.
They're detonators, simple, easy to use.
Every one of them, had laminated instructions and tagged on here. So, as long as the bomber could read, he could go carry out his mission.
The Marine explosives experts don't want us to show their faces, but want us to know the sophistication of the Iraqi suicide squads, unknown in number or location.
This was a centralized place where they dropped all the stuff off, the bombers could pick it up, carry it off, and go carry out their mission. The first type, this pretty much had a 30-second delay. They flipped it on, they pulled this out, 30 seconds, it detonates.
Lieutenant Colonel Chris Conlon's Marines stand guard over these weapons while they await removal.
Destructive power, it would be kind of hard to estimate. It depends on where the guy is when it goes off, but certainly if he got into a crowded area, he could take out 10s, 20s, 30s of people.
Here they also found more than 200 other explosives of the more standard variety, the kind that go under cars, into briefcases, and are used for booby traps. More haunting, what's not here, these empty hangars suggesting the possibility that there are Iraqis wearing explosive vests, waiting to detonate themselves. How many vests were distributed before the Fedayeen fled? The Marines have no idea. Jason Bellini, CNN, Baghdad, Iraq.
And after a short break, we'll look back at the major developments in the war in Iraq, from the sounds of the first minutes of the war to images of the fall of Saddam Hussein's regime.
Where's the presentation?
Atlanta.
Gee, sounds like an important business meeting.
It is.
Then stay in a hotel designed by business travelers. Just like the best golf courses are designed by... golfers? Exactly. Only a golfer will know to put the windmill before the clown's mouth. Volcano placement is critical.
Courtyard, designed by business travelers to have what you need, including high-speed internet access.
If you can putt through a plastic volcano, you can putt anywhere.
Courtyard, your Marriott awaits.
Discover the value.
Coral calcium, only $7.50. Discover the selection. Glucosamine chondroitin, only $7.35.
Discover the quality.
Natural vitamin E, only $2.95.
Discover the convenience.
Natural vitamin C, only $1.15.
Discover the best way to buy the finest quality vitamins, minerals, and herbs right from home at incredible 70% savings.
CoQ10, only $4.80.
Discover Puritan's Pride, America's #1 shop-at-home vitamin catalog.
Saw Palmetto, only $2.90.
Over 4 million people nationwide trust the Puritan's Pride catalog for all their vitamin needs.
Noni juice, only $8.95.
Call now.
Call now.
Call now for your free 70% off Puritan's Pride catalog and discover the smart way to buy vitamins.
Ester C, only $4.65.
All Puritan's Pride products have a 100% one-year money-back guarantee.
What are you waiting for? Call now for your free Puritan's Pride catalog and receive a coupon for $5 off your first order. Call 1-800-475-6644.
CNN Tomorrow. Dan Rather, live from Baghdad for the hour and taking your calls. Dan Rather in Baghdad on Larry King Live. CNN Tomorrow, 9 Eastern.
Now, at the touch of a button, our great collection of movies and shows is yours with Comcast On Demand. Pick a title. In a sport dominated by men, a woman is about to make some waves. Jump into action instantly and use your Comcast digital remote to control the rush. Order Blue Crush. Control it for up to 24 hours. Comcast On Demand from Comcast Digital Cable.
I remember it being a special day. It was Father's Day in New York. My wife at the time was pregnant with our first child. It was back in 1964. Jim Bunning threw his no-hitter. Jim and I were old bridge partners, and this particular day, he just twirled a gem. I was proud to be his friend and proud to watch a masterpiece.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Those pictures out of Washington, D.C. as Private Jessica Lynch and other wounded troops make their way to the Walter Reed Army Medical Center. Before we hit to the top of the hour and begin our next hour of coverage, we want to take you back to look at some of the more unforgettable moments of the war up to now.
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations.
This will be a campaign unlike any other in history. A campaign characterized by shock, by surprise, by flexibility.
I'm getting increasingly concerned by humanitarian casualties in this conflict. And I would want to remind all belligerents that they should respect international humanitarian law.
Specialist Joseph Hudson.
U.S. soldiers have been captured by Iraqi military forces and are being held as prisoners of war.
Where do you come from?
Texas.
An American soldier POW has been rescued.
One of the first priorities is to rescue our people and bring our people back.
War.
Hit them hard.
hit them with the force of belief whenever they approach you. Saddam airport was a graveyard for them. Hundreds of their bodies are now in the airport.
We're seeing history unfold, events that will shape the course of a country, the fate of a people, and potentially the future of the region.
Images we will not soon forget. Before we hit the next hour, too, we want to take you back live to Baghdad, where there is some sort of protest going on. We're not sure what these people are protesting, but they've been here for a few hours. Hopefully we'll get Martin Savage or Michael Holmes to tell us what this is about. Some explosions heard in Baghdad earlier this morning near one of Saddam Hussein's presidential palaces. Don't know much about that either. We'll give you the latest information, though, as we hit our next hour. We'll be right back.
Mr. Hogan is here to talk about software.
Yeah.
Beautiful day, isn't it? So, how much software would you like to buy?
We're thinking about a license for 20 servers.
Great! 500 it is.
We're not that big of a company.
Great! 500 it is.
Mr. Williams for 230 is here.
Great!
Thank you.
Does any software company actually listen? We do. Introducing Flex Select Licensing from Computer Associates.
Road game, huh? I just love road games. No distractions, just you against the world. It's an opportunity to prove yourself, to show everyone out there you can win no matter what.
It's just a sales call.
Son, there's no such thing as just a sales call.
When you're on the road, count on Fairfield Inn's inviting affordable rooms.
Son, you need a fight song.
Yeah, fight song. Break coats and break.
Road game, huh?
Now make 5 stays and earn a free weekend. Call 1-888-MARRIOT today. Fairfield Inn. Your Marriott awaits.
It's a beautiful morning.
Ask your doctor about Vioxx, a prescription medicine from Merck. And find out if Vioxx is right for you. Vioxx.
Dave. Larry. How is that Dell consolidation going? TCO's down. Uptime? Highly available. Great. And you? Well, you know, we're still running a proprietary Unix-based system. Right.
A Dell flexible solution with Dell PowerEdge servers and Intel Xeon processors can help manage your enterprise for less. Easy as Dell. Call or go online today.
The power of trust. America's most credible news source, year after year. The power of pictures. Images live the instant the story happens. The power of reporting. More bureaus than any U.S. television news organization. The power of CNN. The most trusted name in news. As the war in Iraq continues, CNN is there. From the front lines to the home front. Around the world, around the clock. When you need to know, stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Major city not under coalition control. Hello and welcome to CNN's coverage of the war in Iraq. We welcome our viewers in the United States. I'm Fionnuala Sweeney in London.
And I'm Michael Holmes in Baghdad, where there is a mood of frustration on the streets. I'll bring you that and a lot more in just a few minutes.
Well, let's begin with a look at the latest developments. U.S. Marines are trying to capture the last major city not under coalition control, Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit. Al Jazeera television showed pictures of U.S. troops and tanks in the city and reports the city is totally under U.S. control, but a coalition spokesman wouldn't go that far. Starting on Thursday, an 18-member committee is scheduled to begin meeting in Kirkuk. The agreement was the result of talks among U.S. military personnel, Kirkuk's tribesmen, and political and religious leaders. One leader says 6 Kurds, 6 Arabs and 6 Turkomans will be in charge of restoring order and essential services in the northern oil-rich city. The military also met with engineers at the Northern Oil Company to discuss restarting operations. Engineers say the company's computers, files and equipment have either been stolen, burned or destroyed. One of Saddam Hussein's half-brothers is now in U.S. custody. A U.S. official says Watban Ibrahim Hassan al-Tikriti was caught as he attempted to escape across the border into Syria. He's on the U.S. list of the 55 most wanted Iraqi senior leaders. Well, for the latest on what the coalition is saying about the fighting in Tikrit, Tom Mentir is at Central Command in Doha. We go there live now. Tom.
Fanula's Central Command is saying basically that they do have troops in Tikrit, not going much farther than what General Tommy Franks did on yesterday. But they did come out this morning with another friendly fire report. They now say that indications are that a Patriot missile battery brought down on April the 2nd an FA-18 Hornet that was shot down apparently now by a Patriot missile battery. The pilot was killed in that incident. Joining us now is Group Captain Al Lockwood, the British spokesman. We've been talking about Tikrit. We've been seeing what's going on in Tikrit. This could be the last major battle. Now U.S. Marines are apparently in the center of the city.
Yes, I believe so. Tikrit is yet to fall, but hopefully it will be liberated in due course, and we look forward to that very much.
You're much farther south down in Basra. Humanitarian issues there, definitely a major factor. Hospitals complaining they don't have enough oxygen, they don't have enough IV kits. Many of the military hospitals have been sacked. The civilian hospitals are running desperately short. Safe enough for the humanitarian groups to come in there and fill up the shelves.
This has our highest priority at the moment, security of the city. You will know that yesterday we commenced patrols with elements of the civil police from Basra, and we hope to continue and judge the reaction to them by the local population over the next week. We need to get the city secure. We need UNSECOR, the United Nations people, to come in, declare it safe, to allow the flow of humanitarian aid. It is our top priority, Tom, and we are taking it very, very seriously.
You had a few days advance on the situation as it is in Baghdad. They're now out recruiting police officers from the former positions to come in and work with patrols, much as you did in Basra. If you had to tell them how it went, what would you say?
Well, just take it slowly, a step at a time. Win the confidence of the local population. Engage all the civic leaders, both the civil tribal side, those community leaders that exist within communities, speak to the religious leaders, and get a consensus of how the people want their city to be shaped in the future. Bring them on board, work hard together to try and establish law and order. And very much so in Basra now. Law and order is the name of the day. We don't allow looting any longer. It is a criminal act from now on, and they will be treated accordingly. But gaining the confidence of the people is the key.
The political process is starting. There's going to be a meeting in Nasiriyah. Your foreign secretary is due in the region. He's in Bahrain now. We'll be coming to Qatar in the next 24 hours, we believe. How important is this process? As important as the war fighting?
Probably even more so. The war fighting was there to find the weapons of mass destruction, remove the regime. Now it's the rebuilding of Iraq, which I think will take an awful lot longer than the short military campaign we've just witnessed. It is crucial. It is the way forward. The world to engage now and help rebuild Iraq so it can take its rightful place in the world.
General Franks in his interview yesterday talked about there are some areas they haven't been to. Until they get to them, total security in the country cannot be assured. How difficult is it going to be to secure the entire country, not just the major cities?
Well, it is a major task, and we will continue until it's done. But more and more we're finding that word of mouth is getting out, and that communities are prepared for our arrival, and that they have thrown off the last vestiges of the regime already, welcome the coalition, and realize that they can have a part in rebuilding Iraq tomorrow.
All right, Group Captain Al Lockwood, thank you very much. So it looks like the U.S. may be following the British model in Basra, but as General Franks said just 24 hours ago, there remains a lot to be done. Fanula?
Tom Mentir in Doha, Qatar. Well, to Baghdad now, where Michael Holmes is in the Iraqi capital to update us on the current situation. Michael.
Fionnuala, thanks very much. Listening to Tom Mintier there and the group captain saying that there still needs to be much done in Basra regarding security. Well, there needs to be a whole lot more done here in Baghdad. Of course, US Marines are saying that it is not their job to provide security at this stage. They are still in a combat role. And they are trying to recruit police here. But one thing that's interesting about that, as police begin their patrols of the city today, is that these are the same police officers that were doing the job on the beat under Saddam Hussein. They are famed for taking bribes from people after stopping them for traffic infractions that never happened. And so there is a mistrust of the police here, a suspicion that they are tainted by association with the Saddam Hussein regime. However, the situation is such in Baghdad that local Iraqis want anything they can get. And if that is the old policeman doing the same old job, well, they'll take that right now. The looting has scaled back. It's scaled back only because there's so little left to loot. And that is creating a sense of frustration on the streets of Baghdad. We have seen almost daily demonstrations behind me in one of the main roundabouts in the city. And the people you're listening to there, we filmed only minutes ago. They were chanting "Down, down, USA." And interestingly, and perhaps significantly, they were also chanting, some of them, "Long live the Ba'ath Party." The Ba'ath Party, as many of you will know, is the party of Saddam Hussein. Many people who were members of the Ba'ath Party would deny it to your face now because they fear their own security by association. But clearly, some people are willing to stand up and chant to the world's media, "Long live the Ba'ath Party." What you're seeing is an indication of the level of frustration also. There are many ordinary Baghdad people in that crowd, and they want security, they want the electricity back on, they want the telephones to work, and they want criminals who are looting to stop it. And at the moment, there's very, very few people willing to stop them. The looting has been widespread. It's been in museums, it's been in government offices, it has also been in hospitals. Andrea Cathwood has this report.
The maiming of innocence. This is the face of collateral damage, that military term for what happens to civilians in war. Ali Ismail Abbas doesn't know he's become a symbol of his country's suffering abroad. If he did, I doubt he'd care. For 16 days, he's been lying in agony on a hospital bed, reliving the horror that brought him here. What he wants, he keeps telling me, are his arms back. What do you say to a 12-year-old who asks if you can do that? He's lost much more than his limbs. He's lost his family. When the explosion tore through his home, he was sitting on his pregnant mother's lap, he tells me. His father, brothers and cousins all around, all afraid of the bombing. All were killed. He too may still die.
I know. We are concerned first about his life, not actually about his arms for the time being, because his life is in danger.
That danger is septicemia. His nurse says his wounds are already infected. They neither have the drugs nor the hygiene to fight it. His best chance, she says, is abroad. Outside this hospital is in chaos. Gunmen keep looters at bay, as well as those desperate for treatment. There is no more room inside. Dead bodies in the forecourt, militia at the gates. And yet this hospital is the best that Baghdad has to offer. This war that destroyed Ali's family has also destroyed any chance he had of receiving proper medical care in his own country. Ali's elderly aunt, his only surviving relative, brings him food and water. But he needs not just loving care, but specialist medical treatment to save his life. Andrea Catherwood, ITV News, Baghdad.
Yeah, this looting is still very much a problem around Baghdad. As I said, it is not the problem it was 3 or 4 days ago, chiefly because most things have already been looted. But people are afraid to leave their homes in case they get looted. They've set up temporary roadblocks in the streets and they are not going to work, which is in itself creating a problem when it comes to getting some sort of civil order back to Baghdad. Tim Rogers looks at that.
Right across the city, they're still at it. District by district, street by street, literally tearing the old system apart. Baghdad is being consumed by looting. The old world is being cleaned out. Nothing is sacred. In this street, it's the turn of the National Theatre.
They are looting everything, they are selling everything, destroying everything. I don't know why. Goodbye.
And nearby, it's the same story at the Ministry of Trade. It symbolises the chaos that exists within this city, that this building has simply been left to burn because there's no fire service available to put the flames out. But in another district, one faithful servant of the British Embassy is doing his best to keep the looters out. He's watched over it with his son for 12 years since it was closed after the First Gulf War. Nahadim Rahim opened the gates for us to show us for the first time the world he's been protecting, a little piece of Britain with the gardens overgrown, but otherwise completely intact.
3 days ago,
looters tried to use a crowbar to get in, but he chased them off and has since nailed the doors shut. Inside, everything is as it was, but covered with a decade of dust. The Nafi was an obvious target, but there hasn't been any beer here for years. Outside, a foxhole in the gardens, where, according to Mr. Rahim, Iraqi police were dug in. But this is now a happier place, where children find sanctuary to play. Out in the city chaos, there is still unfinished business. A surrendering Iraqi soldier, attacked by a crowd, angry at the regime he defended. Like many here now, he has found a different voice. Tim Rogers, ITV News, Baghdad.
A couple of important meetings taking place. Fionnuala, you mentioned earlier the meeting in Kirkuk with local leaders there. And there is also a meeting going to be taking place in Nasiriyah, south of Baghdad. That will be hosted by the Iraqi National Congress, which, as many people will know, was really the opposition in exile. Not everyone thinks that its leader, Ahmed Chalabi, is the one to be leading Iraq, but what is hoped will come out of that meeting is at least the emergence of some kernel, if you like, of political structure, and perhaps the emergence of some potential leaders. Fionnuala.
All right, Michael Holmes in Baghdad. Well, civil disorder has taken a heavy toll on the strategic northern city of Kirkuk. Government and academic buildings have been ransacked, leaving the city without the core institutions to keep it running. Ben Wiedemann reports.
American soldiers man a checkpoint outside Kirkuk, trying to keep looters and gunmen out of town. An attempt to end the chaos that followed the Iraqi army's retreat. But the damage has already been done. It's too late for this school. A mob wasted it. Nermeen al-Mufti attended the Rafidain school 30 years ago. To her, the new Iraq is hardly an improvement over the old.
So if it is a freedom, it is a freedom in the taste of ashes.
Ashes and flames. Someone torched an abandoned Iraqi army personnel carrier in the middle of Kirkuk, a funeral pyre for a regime that has disappeared. Rare is the street here where something hasn't been ransacked, burned, or demolished. The ashes lie thick on the floor of Kirkuk City Hall, looted, then torched after the Iraqi army fled. All the annoying but necessary paperwork that keeps a modern city functioning, gone. Farhat Nazmi's job was to keep Kirkuk clean. He worked here for 32 years. I was devastated when I saw the office like this, he says. What can I do now? Kirkuk's courthouse has also been trashed. No appendage of Saddam's hated regime spared. Years of legal records reduced to dust. What started as regime change has, as a result of the looting and lawlessness, become regime obliteration. Gone are the tools of repression, but also gone are the courthouses, the schools, the government buildings that keep a society running. At a government warehouse, this year's cotton harvest has been burning for 3 days. What the looters couldn't take, they torched. A country's wealth, some might say its very soul, seems to be going up in flames. Ben Wiedemann, CNN, Kirkuk, Northern Iraq.
Well, still ahead on CNN, the latest on the rocky relations between Damascus and Washington. More on that when we return.
Discover the value.
Coral calcium, only $7.50. Discover the selection. Glucosamine chondroitin, only $7.35.
Discover the quality.
Natural vitamin E, only $2.95.
Discover the convenience.
Natural vitamin C, only $1.15.
Discover the best way to buy the finest quality vitamins, minerals, and herbs right from home at incredible 70% savings.
CoQ10, only $4.80.
Discover Puritan's Pride, America's #1 shop-at-home vitamin catalog.
Saw Palmetto, only $2.90.
Over 4 million people nationwide trust the Puritan's Pride catalog for all their vitamin needs.
Noni juice, only $8.95.
Call now.
Call now.
Call now for your free 70% off Puritan's Pride catalog and discover the smart way to buy vitamins.
Ester C, only $4.65.
All Puritan's Pride products have a 100% one-year money-back guarantee.
What are you waiting for?
Call now for your free Puritan's Pride catalog and receive a coupon for $5 off your first order. Call 1-800-475-6644.
Welcome back. Here's a look at the latest developments in Iraq. U.S. Marines are trying to capture the last major city not under coalition control, Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit. Al Jazeera television showed pictures of U.S. troops and tanks in the city and reports the city is totally under U.S. control. Starting on Thursday, an 18-member committee is scheduled to begin meeting in Kirkuk. The agreement was the result of talks among U.S. military personnel, Kirkuk's tribesmen, and political and religious leaders. The military also met engineers at the Northern Oil Company to discuss restarting operations. Engineers say the company's computers, files, and equipment have either been stolen, burned, or destroyed. Well, more now on Tikrit, and U.S. Marines are reportedly in control of the center of the city, Saddam Hussein's hometown. Al Jazeera television shows pictures of U.S. tanks taking up positions in the central square. A Canadian reporter embedded with the U.S. Marines told CNN that it was still too early to judge.
I'm in Tikrit. I'm in the city with the U.S. Marines. They've occupied an absolutely immense palace of Saddam Hussein's overlooking the town. It's a fantastic view. It's a sunny day. There was a gunfight nearby about 5 minutes ago, but the Marines, Marine Major told me 30 seconds ago, the battle for Tikrit, if you like, is going very, very well. Not great resistance.
Well, according to reports on Al Jazeera, a group of armed men who say they represent local tribal groups are attempting to negotiate a ceasefire with U.S. forces in Tikrit. The men also say the Republican Guard and Fedayeen left the city 5 days ago. Washington is warning Syria against providing refuge for members of the Iraqi regime. U.S. officials say senior members of the Ba'ath Party have already entered the country, but informed Western sources in Damascus tell CNN they have no knowledge of this. CNN's Chris Burns looks at the dispute and other developments at the White House.
President Bush learned of the POW releases early in the morning. As he returned to the White House from his Camp David retreat, he said it more than made his day.
Today's a great day for the families, comrades, loved ones of the 7 missing in action who are free.
But the president also noted that other Americans remain unaccounted for.
We still have missing in action in Iraq. We will continue to look for them. We pray that they too will be safe and free one of these days.
The chaos after the fall of Baghdad has put the U.S.-led coalition on the defensive. Mr. Bush tried to put it in perspective and shift the blame to the fallen dictator.
Saddam Hussein created the conditions for chaos. He created conditions of fear and hatred. And it's going to take a while to stabilize the country.
The president had more tough words for Syria regarding weapons of mass destruction and concerns former members of Saddam Hussein's regime could flee there.
We believe there are chemical weapons in Syria, for example, and we will Each situation will require a different response, and of course first things first, we're here in Iraq now, and the second thing about Syria is that we expect cooperation.
Cooperation, the Syrians insist, Washington's getting. Damascus says all that tough talk is a red herring.
This is just a campaign about trying to divert attention from the terrible things that are going on in Iraq today, the looting, the lawlessness, mobs in the streets, destroying museums.
Another target of U.S. pressure is North Korea, which, following the U.S.-led crushing of the Iraqi regime, has just signaled willingness to negotiate multilaterally about its nuclear program.
The president sounded upbeat on that news, citing good progress toward getting those talks started. Asked if Syria, North Korea, and other countries should learn something from the Iraq war, the president answered, "People have got to know that we are serious about stopping the spread of weapons of mass destruction." Chris Burns, CNN, the White House.
Well, Britain has been holding talks with Syria, and the British Foreign Secretary Jack Straw spoke about the relationship a short time ago in Bahrain.
There's an important agenda for discussion with the Syrian government. My ministerial colleague Mike O'Brien is going to Damascus today for those discussions. Prime Minister Blair spoke to President Bashar over the weekend, and I spoke to Foreign Minister Dr. Shara on Friday. There are important questions which the Syrians need to answer. So far as is, quote, Syria next on the list, we have made it clear that it is not. There is no next list, and the British Prime Minister Blair in the House of Commons last week said that he knew of no plans for Syria to be, quote, next on the list.
One analyst says Syria is walking a fine line in its dealings with the United States and must soon choose which path it will take.
Syria is very close to entering the elusive club of the axis of evil, becoming an honorary member. If it continues adventurism, hiding chemical weapons, if that is indeed the case, harboring Saddam's people, I think the choice really is this for Bashar Assad, the president of Syria: whether to reform the Syrian system or whether to continue adventurism. And I think the problem that Bashar Assad has is that the remnants of his father's regime, Hafez al-Assad, are still very much in power. And also, Syria's umbilical cord is tied to one of the founding members of the Axis of Evil, which is Iran. There is a very strong connection between the government of Iran and Syria.
Well, informed Western sources in the Syrian capital say they've no knowledge of any of Saddam's family members being harbored in Syria. For analysis on Syria's government and its position, I'm joined now by Barry Alamuddin from the Al Hayat newspaper. George Bush making noises yesterday, laying down markers, so to speak, about Syria, but no explicit threat about the use of force against Damascus. How's that being viewed in the Arab world?
Well, we've heard threats from Rumsfeld and Colin Powell as well over the weekend through different interviews. It's not going down well at all, as you can imagine, Finola. Actually, it's amazing that now nobody is talking about how Syria cooperated fully with the Americans in their fight after the 11th of September for terrorism, and how helpful it was indeed and instrumental in catching many of these people. And people in the Arab world are posing many questions. Why is it now that the Americans are talking about, and when I say the Americans, I mean the American administration, of course, why are they talking about chemical and nuclear weapons or chemical and biological weapons in Syria? Why aren't they mentioning the nuclear weapons that Israel has?
What is the basis for Washington's belief that Syria has chemical weapons or weapons of mass destruction?
Well, so far the Syrians are denying it and the Americans are claiming it, so we don't know. Perhaps they could send somebody to check it. There is no evidence so far. We have not seen Syria using this like Iraq, for example, used it, or the Israelis have used it at some point. The point here is, Finola, in the Arab world, there is this feeling that it is the Arabs that are targeted. And indeed, Bashar al-Assad said during the summit that this is not a war against Iraq, this is a war that is going to be targeting the whole Arab nation, and he is seen here to be vindicated. And the feeling inside the Arab world is that, like, look at all the sufferings we are seeing now in this war, so why even talk about the possibility of another war? So it is not taken nicely, it's not taken lightly.
But is Damascus worried?
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are, because they have seen that the Americans have threatened and they have gone ahead with their threats. But perhaps they are not worried because they know that they don't harbor any of the Iraqi regime's figures, and maybe they know that they don't have any chemicals or biological weapons. And they know that they are being pressured here because there is a peace process that the American administration is saying that will put all efforts in it, and I'm referring here to the Israeli-Palestinian peace track.
The linkage
Yes,
made.
yes, absolutely. So perhaps the Americans are putting pressure on Syria as well for that, and also because in Syria there are some offices for people like Hamas and Jihad Islami, and of course because of its link with Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Let's clarify something now. George Bush says Syria cannot harbor any Ba'ath Party members or Baathists from Iraq. Syria itself is run by the Ba'ath Party, but these are two distinct parties.
Oh yes, extremely different. Actually, they were at war with each other all these years. You know, Bashar Assad's father and the Iraqi regime were enemies. They were not friends, and we know that they had no relations for many years. And the relations even that were between Bashar al-Assad's government and the Iraqi governments, which were established lately, were mostly economic, and because Syria needed the money, you know, between the trade and the oil, etc. But you see, this is the problem, is that people are seeing that there is no understanding at depth of the area by the American administration.
And this is where Jack Straw, the British Foreign Secretary, has said just this morning that more dialogue is needed with Syria. There are questions. Is it your belief that there will be dialogue, there will be perhaps direct face-to-face negotiations between Damascus and Washington on this issue, or at least high-level contacts?
Oh, I'm sure the relations were fairly good until recently, you know, between the Americans. And I know that the British have been playing a role, and indeed they are playing a role today. Mike O'Brien, as Jack Straw said, is in Damascus today. I'm sure he will be taking messages from the Americans and from the British administration, advising Bashar al-Assad to cooperate in the coming weeks and months with the American administration. But also I think he would want to tell him as well that we are not part of this war. We will not take any part, and indeed hopefully there will not be such a push. The British role in this, I think, is very important, is very vital, and indeed there is a kind of friendship between Bashar al-Assad and Tony Blair, and hopefully this friendship will bear fruit.
And Michael O'Brien, the British Home Office Minister, is holding talks in Damascus.
Yes, today.
All right, Barry Alamoudi and Dermot Sleeva, thank you very much. Ahead on CNN, more on Iraq after the fall of Saddam Hussein. Stay with us.
CNN Tonight. Dan Rather, live from Baghdad for the hour and taking your calls. Dan Rather in Baghdad on Larry King Live. CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
What would you do to avoid the stress of qualifying for a home loan?
Anything.
Understandable. But that also means you don't get all the benefits of refinancing. You know, like extra cash for home improvements, even lowering your monthly payments by up to hundreds of dollars. AmeriQuest Mortgage understands why you hesitate. That's why we've made getting a loan so easy. For example, at AmeriQuest, you work with one local loan advisor throughout, someone who actually does the paperwork for you and treats you like more than a credit score. With 2 decades of experience, AmeriQuest has perfected the art of the no-stress home loan. To experience that for yourself, call AmeriQuest at 1-800-814-0256 or go to AmeriQuest.com. That's 1-800-814-0256. Call AmeriQuest, the company that knows you are more.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Recapping the latest developments in Iraq, U.S. Marines are on the streets of Tikrit, but a coalition spokesman says Saddam Hussein's hometown is still not secured. Witnesses say the troops moved in early on Monday after coalition airstrikes targeted the town Sunday. No word yet on what kind of resistance the Marines are facing. A measure of calm reported in Baghdad as its residents begin lining up to return to work. This group was outside the Palestine Hotel in central Baghdad. More than 2,000 Baghdad policemen turned up at a local police college to register for work. US forces in Kirkuk say they've been meeting local leaders to work out ways to get that city running again. Additional US tanks rolled into the northern city on Sunday to reinforce troops already there. And in Basra, local police are already working alongside British troops to help restore order in Iraq's second largest city. Well, the outskirts of Tikrit are littered with evidence that the strength of the Iraqi army has been degraded. But as CNN's Brent Sadler found, inside the city, hostilities are ongoing.
The road to Tikrit, targeted by airstrikes, preparing for an armoured assault by US Marines. We approached the city's outskirts in the hours before the Americans arrived.
So we're going through this gate now. This is the southern entrance to Tikrit.
Even as the Marines were moving towards the city, we discovered that many of Iraq's soldiers had fled, their armour abandoned in a hurry.
Extraordinary. The hatch is open. The machine gun obviously working. Bullets in the breech. The hatch open here. It seems that Tikrit's armed forces, the so-called last stand, has simply gone away. We're 3-4 miles, I guess, from the centre of Tikrit. This would have been a well-defended position, dugouts, APCs, all the way along this area. No troops, they've gone. This is under a cover, but no damage. Look, that tank is intact. Crews long gone. You wouldn't know from the highway that this compound here, this very large barracks, was basically in such a shocking state of neglect and disrepair and collapse. Look, this whole place is a scrapyard. This area round here is lined with very large storage facilities, and you'll see a lot of them have been blasted by coalition airstrikes. I would say there are hundreds of armed vehicles in this area, this vast military complex, as we slowly inch our way through it.
On the turn-off to Tikrit, we encounter a lorry driver who said he knew what was happening inside the city. He told us that Tikrit was okay and that Saddam Hussein was halas, Arabic for finished.
Halas? Saddam halas?
Tikrit was not okay.
Right, this is a roadblock. We don't know who they are. Let's go in. A little bit uncertain here. Their waving is on. Let's see who they are. It seems to be okay. No guns drawn. We're going to stop. Right, they're saying don't film. So the camera down. We are now in Tikrit.
But trouble is brewing. Okay, save for bullet-riddled vehicles, a driver with a head wound, and shots that were too close for comfort on the day the US Marines advanced on Tikrit. Brett Sadler, CNN, Northern Iraq.
Now, here with some analysis of the military thinking in Tikrit is Dan Plesh from the Royal United Services Institute. Several thousand US troops, several hundred light armoured vehicles. What are they trying to achieve here?
Well, clearly Tikrit is the home of Saddam Hussein, and a great many of his closest followers come from the tribal areas around the city, and from the beginning of the conflict it was very clear that the US would want to get up here as fast as possible. I think the delay, frankly, has been because the US doesn't really have that many forces in Iraq. They'd have liked to get up there in the first week, but they didn't have the forces, and their air assault forces have been tied down protecting the lines of communication after the difficulties of the first week.
Well, would they have preferred, you said they would like to get up there in the first week, but would they have preferred really to have come down from northern Iraq?
Well, indeed, either up or down, but they've been unable to get to Tikrit until now. We're almost into a month into the war, and in terms of all the rhetoric pre-war about decapitation, shock and awe and so on, the psychological impact of an immediate assault into Tikrit would have been very, very great indeed, but frankly they just weren't able to do it, despite what they may say at this point. So the Marines have driven up now from Baghdad and are taking and destroying resistance in and around the city in short order, as they have done elsewhere.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the army is broken off into 3 sections, and 2 of which are looping around the city to try and encircle it.
Well, that would be fairly standard tactics for envelopment of a city. I think what we've seen back to the British around Basra is to get around the place, start sending in probing military attacks, and if you can, turn these into a full-scale strike into the city centre, and then, as it were, take other sections, other segments of the city once you've got a slice right into the heart.
So they are employing the same tactics that they have done elsewhere throughout.
Well, one can't say exactly, but the general, nor would, and if I did know, I wouldn't want to say. But in general, one can see a similar sort of pattern. And I think also it's quite interesting that, again, comparing what the Americans are doing to pre-war, Donald Rumsfeld was pretty much dismissive of the idea of the huge battle tanks as being the M1 Abrams, which we've seen so much of in this war. Donald Rumsfeld really despised the army for hanging on to these as Cold War relics, but actually we've seen this really very old technology dating back to 1916 has been the king of the battlefield once again, and that many of the people who said it was premature for Rumsfeld to be saying we have to get rid of the tank for shock and awe and all these fancy new concepts will have been proven right, because it is the tank that has got the US military into the heart of these cities and has broken the back time and time again of Saddam's defences, because they have nothing to touch it.
Once the air power has done its stuff.
Once the air power has done its stuff, but even so, frankly, because of the lack of Turkish and Saudi bases, the US hasn't actually been flying that many more combat missions than in the first Gulf War, despite the fact that the requirement has been huge. And air power, it comes and it goes. It doesn't provide the constant physical pressure and firepower that a tank on the ground can provide to otherwise quite vulnerable infantrymen.
From what we know, how would you assess the level of Iraqi resistance in and around Tikrit?
Well, I think, as coalition commanders have said, it has been astonishingly disorganised. There's hardly been a bridge blown in the whole conflict. If the Iraqis had simply blown up the bridges on the approaches to Baghdad, we might well still be tens or dozens of miles outside the city. So one would assume that we see the same pattern of almost guerrilla-style resistance from political forces, and that the regular army has pretty much given up the ghost and gone home, as we saw quite dramatically with the footage of hundreds and thousands of troops walking back down the road from Kirkuk a day or so ago.
Unplush, there we must leave it, but thank you very much.
Camilla.
The US military says the instability in Baghdad and other cities will soon decrease, as it did in Basra. Iraqi police are back on the streets of the country's second largest city, working with British troops to restore order. John Voles reports.
Recruitment day at Basra Police Headquarters. Hundreds of local men enlisted by the British to do a job the British could not do themselves, restoring law and order.
This gentleman studied in West Yorkshire Police Force for 5 years. Yeah, as a policeman, which is quite interesting.
Kerala Al-Salah says he was a district commander here, and now he wants his old job back.
Everything bad now. Everything bad. No safety, no water, no electricity, no telephone. Miserable.
There are background checks, though, to try and ensure these new recruits are not tainted by the old regime. There's not much danger of Saddam's former enforcers showing up for a job, since the people of Basra know who they are.
I'll take you to talk to our police here. Yes. And we can see what we can do.
These are not part of the old central system of the Ba'ath Party. These are not the secret police. These are what were previously known as the traffic police, and that's exactly what they do.
There is little to work with. Police stations have been looted, and the city's main headquarters was bombed by the coalition. Still, it's a start, part of an overall strategy to stop the looting and other crimes which have brought havoc and chaos and threatened to undermine the initial joy of liberation. Across Basra, more British soldiers were on the streets. Armoured fighting vehicles now stand guard outside one bank, and there's security too for the hospital. And on the main roads leading into the city, the wreckage of war is being taken away. But clearly the British are pinning their hopes on handing over power to local Iraqis as soon as possible. What do you do now? Are you police?
Police Iraq.
Basra. Basra police.
Okay.
Basra's finest.
Yes.
These three men were put to work within hours at a checkpoint of one of Basra's busiest streets.
They'll stop the cars, right, and they'll send them to you, and you check them. Yep.
The British are teaching the Iraqis how to man a checkpoint to search for explosives, weapons and stolen goods, and it's hoped in the coming days these former traffic police will do this work on their own. And that's a message to the people of Basra that they're responsible, not the British, for their own affairs. But there's still much to be done. No one knows how much or even when these men will be paid.
Well, we're not exactly sure of the details yet, but they will get paid.
I guess it's important just to get it started and worry about the details later.
Yeah, the here and now is more important.
Law and order first, the details to come. John Bors, CNN, Basra.
And just ahead on CNN, we look at the far-reaching impact of the health crisis created by the deadly SARS virus.
If you were born between 1918 and 1963, call the number on your screen now to find out more about the Silver Care Plan. The average funeral now costs over $6,000. But did you know your survivors may only be able to receive government death benefits up to $300 if they qualify? The Silver Care Plan is a way to help protect your loved ones. To get free information about the plan, just call the number on your screen.
CNN Today. Inside the release of the American POWs. We'll talk to the soldiers' families and get their reactions. Plus, the latest from the front lines as troops work to keep the peace on American Morning with Paula Zahn. CNN Today, 7 Eastern.
CNN takes you into the whole story.
CNN has confirmed that attack a missile or a rocket.
No one gets you closer than CNN, the most trusted name in news. The best show on television is on FX. The Shield. Golden Globe Award winner for Best Drama Series. Golden Globe and Emmy Award winner for Best Actor Michael Chiklis. Hailed by critics as the best cop show on TV. Now, The Shield is back for a second season. Bigger, badder, better than ever. The Shield, Tuesdays at 10 on FX.
At DirecTV, we make it easy to get the channels you want most with great premium services like HBO, Stars, Showtime, Cinemax, and Sports Pack. Get more box office hits, daring originals, sports action, and more, all at a great value.
Really?
It's just $12 for your first choice, $11 for your second choice, and so on. The more you buy, the more you save, and the more choices you have.
Oh, brilliant! Right on!
Visit DirecTV.com or call 1-800-DirecTV and order your favorite premium channels today.
Wildly entertaining and sexy. Outrageous. Ragingly popular. 100% real. Get prepared. The gorgeous Backyard Babes are back for more. Red hot, down and dirty action. So sexy, we can't even show it to you on this commercial.
Unbelievable. Shocking. 100% real. Also now showing on Channel 191. Don't miss the all-new vicious and shocking Best of Backyard Wrestling.
Backyard Babes Down and Dirty is available on direct ticket pay-per-view on Channel 191. Order with your remote.
It's funny and honest and true.
You will end up childless and alone. Doesn't that scare you?
It's about finally growing up.
I'm really interested in this woman. I'd like her to be my girlfriend. There, I've said it.
Oh, brilliant!
It's about what happens when you open your door to life.
He fancies you. He told me.
If there's hope for Will, there's hope for us all. About a boy.
Order it now on Blockbuster Pay-Per-View Movies.
Without France, Belgium, Germany, all the countries who were against the war.
Views don't necessarily reflect those of CNN, but are opinions expressed by those who choose to participate in this open forum.
Welcome back. Here's a look at the latest developments in Iraq. U.S. Marines are trying to capture the last major city not under coalition control, Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit. Al Jazeera television showed pictures of U.S. troops and tanks in the city and reports the city is totally under U.S. control. However, a coalition spokesman says that is premature.
Tikrit is yet to fall, but hopefully it will be liberated in due course, and we look forward to that very much.
Well, starting Thursday, an 18-member committee is scheduled to begin meeting in Kirkuk. The agreement was the result of talks among U.S. military personnel, Kirkuk's tribesmen, and political and religious leaders. The military also met engineers at the Northern Oil Company to discuss restarting operations. Engineers say the company's computers, files, and equipment have either been stolen, burned, or destroyed. Taking a look now at some of the other stories hitting the headlines around the world. 4 men have been found guilty of organizing a suicide bombing outside the U.S. consulate in Karachi, Pakistan last year. A Karachi court gave 2 of the men death sentences and 2 others life in prison. A 5th man was acquitted. All 5 men pleaded not guilty. In June, 12 Pakistanis were killed when a vehicle packed with explosives blew up outside the consulate during morning rush hour. Prosecutors say the convicted men belonged to an offshoot of an extremist Islamic group. Afghan officials say 4 people killed in a car explosion in eastern Afghanistan were planning a terror attack. The men are thought to have been Afghan, Pakistani and Yemeni nationals. Officials say their car was packed with explosives. The news comes as Kabul was also rocked by an explosion on Sunday. The blast took place about a kilometre from the U.S. Embassy. Police in the capital say the blast may have been caused by a rocket or landmine. A truck driver is in custody after a deadly multiple vehicle accident in northern Greece. Police say at least 21 people, mostly students, were killed and 30 injured when a bus plunged 100 metres into a ravine. The accident was set off when logs fell from a truck on a narrow mountain road. The logs hit the bus, which was travelling in the opposite direction. 2 cars crashed into the bus and burst into flames. Canadian researchers say they have completed the genetic sequencing of a virus believed to be causing severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS. Officials at a research centre in British Columbia say the information may help scientists to determine if the virus is indeed the cause of SARS. Researchers say this is the first step toward a diagnostic test and possible vaccine. The worldwide death toll from SARS has now reached at least 135. Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao is calling for more official efforts to combat SARS. He visited SARS patients at a Beijing military hospital on Saturday. China has reported 74 new cases of SARS and raised its official death toll to 64. And health authorities in the Indian state of Goa have introduced strict measures to prevent an outbreak of SARS. Travellers at all entry points will be asked to disclose their medical histories. More than 250,000 international tourists visit Goa each year. Well, the SARS virus is also impacting the financial world, and Charles Hodson is here with more on that. Charles.
Fanula. Well, the airline industry is one of the hardest hit by the SARS outbreak. Shares of Hong Kong's Cathay Pacific fell 6% on Monday on speculation that the carrier may be forced to ground its entire fleet if passenger numbers continue to fall as sharply as they have in recent weeks. In a company memo leaked to the media over the weekend, Cathay said daily traffic could fall from an average of 30,000 passengers to only 6,000 in May as a result of the deadly SARS outbreak. But Cathay tells CNN it has absolutely no plans to ground the fleet and says it intends to continue operating as many flights as it can financially support. The outbreak of the deadly SARS virus has also hit corporate travel, keeping the buyers from meeting the sellers. And as CNN's Christy Lou Stout found out, critical deals are being put on ice.
A time to shine. Each year, timepieces sparkle at the World Watch Fair in Basel, Switzerland. A chance for Hong Kong's watch industry to reel in business.
Customer get the sample and then place the order. The total year we can sell more or less like $1 billion. It's a quarter of our total sales.
25% of sales lost. More than 300 Hong Kong watchmakers weren't allowed to attend the fair because of Swiss government concerns regarding the deadly SARS virus. Trade fairs are a critical hub of international business, where sellers make their pitch and buyers touch the goods. But in the wake of the SARS outbreak, many dealers are now foregoing the shows. Over a quarter of companies surveyed by the Business Travel Coalition have banned trips to SARS-infected countries in Asia, which isn't welcome news for conventioneers. Organizers at the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center say they are in talks with about 50 clients to postpone or cancel events. So the Asian Hospitality Expo could follow in the footsteps of high-profile clients like the Rolling Stones and Santana. Both called off their Hong Kong Convention Center concerts due to the SARS outbreak.
A major blow to this facility, 64,000 square meters of rentable space with the hush of a museum.
But Hong Kong's Trade Development Council is persevering.
Trade fair is very important for Hong Kong, and we must let the world know that Hong Kong is still open for business.
Despite objections from exhibitors, Hong Kong will host 3 trade fairs this month, with repeat acts in July.
So although I'm sure we're going to lose a lot of the visitors from Europe and from America, we're going to still get a lot of businessmen from Asia, from China, and also locally from Hong Kong too.
To reach travel-wary clients, companies have found ways to adapt, conducting meetings by video. But there are some things you must do in person.
When he take the sample, he may change this to yellow color, or the transparency. Maybe he don't like this a little bit white background. He like to all clear.
To feel the merchandise and seal the deal. For Hong Kong watchmakers looking forward to the Switzerland show, a thought for another time. Christy Lustout, CNN, Hong Kong.
Europe's stock markets are mostly lower this Monday as investors turn their focus away from war and towards the start of the corporate earnings season. Let's have a look at the numbers as they stand right now. In London, the FTSE 100 is trading around just about 0.25% higher, but all the others are down. The Xetra DAX is off by 0.5%. Same story for the Paris CAC 40 and the Zurich SMI, just about flat there. The war in Iraq has dominated matters at the International Monetary Fund and World Bank spring meeting. It ended on Sunday with agreement to send a mission to Iraq in the next few weeks to find out what needs to be done to help in the rebuilding effort. Iraq aside, the IMF and World Bank reaffirmed their commitment to help the world's poorest countries. The World Bank's chief economist urged the developed world to do more to reach the United Nations goals of halving poverty by 2015. That's the latest in the world of business. Fanula, back to you.
Charles, let's take a look now at what some of the newspapers around the world are saying about the situation in Iraq. The Korea Herald expresses its concern at the wider ambitions it fears the United States may harbor beyond Iraq. It says, quote, not only the Islamic world, but the rest of the international community also anxiously desires assurance from the Bush administration that this will be the last war of its kind. The International Herald Tribune agrees that the United States must act with the utmost caution. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to world affairs. It says the situation remains chaotic and it will take a long time to judge whether U.S. intervention will bring democracy and prosperity to Iraq. And Egypt's Al Ahram newspaper says Arab governments should learn a lesson from events in Iraq. Democracy is the only way. We should do it and not wait for an American military ruler to replace our leader. Well, many of us are familiar with the stories of the people in the cities of Iraq, but the war has taken a heavy toll on people in Iraq's smaller towns. Photojournalist Peter Turnley has been covering the impact of the war and has their story in still photographs.
My name is Peter Turnley. I'm a photojournalist. I've been on assignment for the Denver Post newspaper. I've been working as a unilateral journalist. I've been particularly preoccupied by the effects of this war on the lives of people, both on the lives of the Iraqi people and on the lives of the soldiers that have been involved in the conflict. People had been told before the war began, with pamphlets that were dropped and with various radio messages, that this war implied that aid would arrive immediately. At worst, what I saw was an expression of hostility often, but at best, an expression of people waiting to see when water would arrive, when food aid would arrive, when this sense of any kind of deliverance would actually come forth. The first delivery of food aid I saw was in Safwan, on the southernmost city on the border with Kuwait. And this was not a scene of euphoria. It was a scene of frenzy. It was mostly elder men that were muscling their way in to hoard food, and there were scenes of many poor elder women that were pushed off to the side of this aid distribution that we're simply not getting any food. The first and only moment that I actually saw glimpses of smiles was in a town called Al-Zubair, and I came across the first fresh water distribution. There were hordes of Iraqi women that had gathered around this truck and that were fighting each other with buckets of water to get fresh water. It appears that fresh water has been cut off to almost the entire sector of southern Iraq since the beginning of the war. I went to one of the main hospitals in Baghdad, a hospital that had many both civilian wounded and Iraqi military wounded. I rarely have seen a scene of such total deprivation in terms of medical supplies, hygiene, absolutely no sterilized instruments. The emergency room was just full of people sitting and laying on beds, not being attended to. People were wailing and crying. I've always been drawn to people that have too little as opposed to people that have too much. I feel that the visual medium is a very strong and powerful one for drawing attention to the plight of people who otherwise could easily be ignored because their story is not often seen or heard. Many people have suffered. Many people are continuing to suffer. Lots of pain has been inflicted. And it seems to me that it will be a long time before much of the destruction will be cleared away and in any way forgotten.
That report from photojournalist Richard Townley. You're watching CNN. Coverage of the war in Iraq continues after this break. Stay with us.
Very funny. What?
For that long road to maturity, we'll be there.
CNN Today, inside the release of the American POWs. We'll talk to the soldiers' families and get their reactions. Plus, the latest from the front lines as troops work to keep the peace on American Morning with Paula Zahn. CNN Today, 7 Eastern. CNN Tonight. Dan Rather, live from Baghdad for the hour and taking your calls. Dan Rather in Baghdad on Larry King Live. CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
A legendary voice returns to his gospel roots.
Morning has broken.
Aaron Neville, Gospel Roots, a timeless collection of inspirational classics from one of music's most enduring talents.
Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day.
This soulful 2-CD set contains 25 inspirational tracks. Available now only in this very special TV. Aaron Neville, Gospel Roots. Experience over 1.5 hours of pure gospel music. To order, call the number on your...
With the coalition saying it's moving to restore order in Baghdad, sporadic resistance continues to flare. Looters focus on new targets, and residents of the capital protest in anger over the situation. Hello and welcome to CNN's coverage of the events in Iraq. I'm Fanula Sweeney in London. Michael Holmes will join me shortly from Baghdad. Now, the latest developments. In Baghdad, a crowd stages a demonstration calling for law and order in the Iraqi capital. Coalition commanders acknowledge looting in Baghdad has not been completely eliminated, but appears to have eased. Iraqi police and US troops are jointly patrolling the city's streets to try and quell the lawlessness engulfing the capital since the fall of Saddam Hussein's regime. The US says it will work with international agencies to secure Baghdad museums and recover or restore stolen or broken antiquities. The Bush administration is accusing Syria of developing chemical weapons, supporting terror groups and giving safe harbor to Iraqi leaders. Damascus denies it has chemical weapons and says it never cooperated with Saddam's regime. British Foreign Secretary Jack Straw says the US and Britain want Syria to provide the fullest possible cooperation.
There are some important questions for Syria to answer and to deal with. And it's very important that Syria accepts the new reality and operates in a constructive, cooperative way with us and the United States, and in particular deals with all these questions about whether they have taken in fugitives from the Saddam regime and so on. But there's an opportunity here for an important new beginning for Syria.
US troops have found 11 mobile chemical and biological laboratories buried near an ammunition plant at Karbala. Our US general says no chemical or biological weapons were found along with the laboratories. Iraqi opposition leaders meet on Tuesday in the southern city of Nasiriyah with the US envoy to share views about a new Iraqi government. US officials say it is the first of many such gatherings.